Today we have Joyce Rice, who is going to share many mediums of wealth and what that really looks like. So without further ado, Miss Rice, if you would.
Absolutely. Welcome, ladies. I'm so glad that you could join me. You can give a wave. I see Miss Ardrada. How are you? Thank you for joining. Um, Miss Griffin, nice to see you. As Brittany has shared, this will be information that will be made public. Definitely look for any links where you can go back and look at the information. This information is comprehensive. And so I just want to encourage you to not feel like you have to digest so much. Just pull out the concepts and inbox me later and let's connect later. And then you can go back and watch a video. But my name is Joyce Rice, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. And I am super happy to be here. We've got another person coming in, and I'll try to keep a lookout for that, Brittany, so that I don't not allow folks to come in. But my name is Joyce Rice. I am so many things, but this is why we're here, because we as women, we're able to build so many things. So can everyone see me before I continue to proceed? Can everyone see the screen? Okay. So my name is Joyce Rice. I am a business consultant at large. What that essentially means is I'm a business consultant at work. I'm a Guilford County Workforce Development Board business consultant, 9 to 5. And I'm also an entrepreneur. And what that basically means is I consult small businesses and organizations. I help individuals with their personal finances. I've done that quite a bit professionally in the way of financial planning and budgeting and acquiring assets and managing insurance. And I've also worked directly with small businesses and teams with outlining how they can create a plan and a strategy that's workable and executable in order to meet their goals. So today I'm going to be talking with you about the subject, women build. And I'd like to underscore that by saying women build wealth. That's right, we build wealth. What does that essentially mean? We build wealth. There are historic numbers of women in our country that have been pioneers in building wealth, entrepreneurship, and changing generations, changing their generations, and changing and impacting the lives of others. And if you can just hold on just 1 second. If you'll hold on just 1 second, I've got a slight Okay, I do apologize for that. So I want to just check and make sure that no one is waiting to get admitted into the room. But on the subject of women building wealth, we're going to talk about wealth. We're going to talk about what is involved in that. We're going to talk about what it is and what it is not. We're going to have a really, really good discussion. What I would like to do is I would like you all to be able to participate by asking questions, or at least earmarking those questions by either submitting them via chat or just waiting for an opportunity. It looks like we've got another person trying to join. Let's make sure. Let's see. I can. Okay. So no, that was not a request to join. That was a chat. So we've got ask your questions via chat so that we don't miss you. So again, just wanted to thank you for joining. Really looking forward to getting into the content. So if there aren't any questions, if you all are ready, we can go ahead and get started. Looks like everybody's getting ready. All right. All right. So let's start with, let's go into looking at some history. You know, one of the things we often do is we're so focused on the now. You know, we're in the millennial space. We're looking at, you know, what are things that people are doing now? Who are the heavy hitters now? Who are the players now? But I want to actually take a step back at least 100 years. And I want you all to understand that the concept of building wealth is not anything that is new. Women have not just started building wealth. Women have not just started becoming CEOs. They have not just started creating and innovating. This is something that we have observed for hundreds of years and previous centuries. So why don't we start with a woman by the name of Mary Ellen Pleasant? Now, when I get to the end of my presentation, I'm going to loop back around to these individuals that we're going to talk about here in just a second. But I want to just give you a little bit of information about a couple of very prominent women in history who also happen to be women of color. Mary Ellen Pleasant, born in 1814 at the very end of slavery, was a multimillionaire and very, very wealthy. Now, mind you, in this period of time, it would not behoove a person to brag about that level of wealth, but she was wealthy, and she was wealthy in a discreet manner. Okay. And just as Brittany said, feel free to take notes, but I'm going to be available to answer questions. What about this Mary Ellen Pleasant? Okay, she's born in 1814 at the very end of slavery, meaning that once legislation had passed that slavery would end, slavery would now be illegal. Okay, so you're in a very, very turbulent time. But here you have this investor. Okay, she was a serial entrepreneur. What does that mean? That means that she didn't put all her eggs in one basket. That means that she was not only successful with not just one business, but multiple businesses. But how did it all start? How did it all start? She ended up moving to the West Coast during the gold rush era, and she served as a domestic servant, a domestic worker for white families, white men. Now if you remember the gold rush era, a lot of and we'll say men, it's okay to say that because everything was very gender based back during those days. A lot of white men and even some Black cowboys ventured off to the West Coast to mine for gold. So she was a domestic worker in homes of white men. And what happened to her? She was a domestic worker, but her ear was to the ground. She learned investment tricks. She learned concepts in investing. She understood timing of marketing and the markets. So she was a quick learner, and she was a discreet learner. This is where she first began to feel compelled to venture into those early stages of building wealth. It starts with knowledge and information. You don't just wake up and decide you're going to own a business or buy a business or become an entrepreneur. It starts with a place of learning and exploring. So it may be something that you are passionate about or something that intrigues you, that draws you to learn more about it. Those are your building blocks. So I would advise you to pay attention to the things that really, really interest you, because I can promise you that there is probably a way to monetize your interest. And that is exactly what Mary Ellen Pleasant did. She started to learn and understand business by working as a domestic among other wealthy, successful business white men. Okay. Here's one of the other prominent things. As she began to grow successful, she understood, okay, I may not be able to do this all by myself. It may be good for me to consider partnership. She went into partnership with, listen to this, someone who knew about things that she didn't know about. So you may be 100% on point and on target and successful and knowledgeable about a certain area or sector of industry or facts or specialties. But guess what? You can broaden your effectiveness and your presence by partnering with someone that doesn't know, that knows something that you don't know. She partnered with Thomas Bell. He was a banker, a financier, if you will. Now, mind you, she did not have a formal education, but she had good wisdom and knowledge. And she was wise enough to know, in order for me to scale this and make this work and make these exploits work, I need to partner with someone that knows money. And that's exactly what she did. Now, in her success, she became notably wealthy, and she began to live outwardly wealthy and successful. She built a 30-room mansion. Now, in today's time, that would be worth over $2.4 million. And I don't know about you, but I would be happy to live in a $2.4 million house. And I would not be embarrassed or apologetic about it whatsoever. She began to live outwardly as a wealthy woman, a wealthy Black woman. Listen to this, post slavery. She owned real estate property, multiple properties. She owned boarding homes. She owned these boarding homes. Now, here's the front. The front was you need a place to stay, you pay for a room, you live here. But guess what the undercurrent front was? She was supporting the Underground Railroad movement. So she had these boarding houses. She was also able to support slaves that were, now mind you, listen to this, slavery had ended, but Black folks are still running from the South. You understand what I'm saying? And so she was helping to board individuals that were running from the South. She was boarding them. So she had boarding homes, or I guess we could call them hotels or motels, if you will, if we were to translate that into this day. And she was able to help her people, help her community in those efforts during early civil rights. She was known as the mother of civil rights. She invested thousands of dollars towards civil rights initiatives and partnered with leaders. Now, going back to that point, and this is going to be a teaching lesson much later on, she died in poverty. This was a woman who lived wealthy, who impacted other people's lives. She learned as she went. She learned the skill of business. She learned the skill of partnership. She learned the skill of scaling her business. However, she died in poverty. Why did she die in poverty? She died in poverty for a few reasons. Number one, she did not understand that when you are in partnership with someone who owns part of your business, who's also married, you're going to have to potentially contend with that spouse. And when her business partner, Thomas Bell, died, sure enough, his living spouse contended with her for a good portion of her assets. In fact, most of her assets. And because she did not have the legalese behind what was hers versus what was his, she lost quite a few court battles and had to end up giving up her assets to her deceased partner's spouse, wife, if you will, and ended up having to move out of her her 2.4, today's time, $2.4 million mansion. And she ended up moving in with relatives until she died. Now, this is a success story and it's a tragedy all at the same time. The reason why it's a tragedy is because, number one, when you think about wealth, and we're going to talk about this, but wealth is generational. You don't have wealth until you are truly able to impact, bless, or transfer it to the next generation. Okay? That's real wealth. I'm not talking about, $500,000 in the bank that by the time you die, it's tied up in probate because you owe money on so many different properties. You have assets, but having true wealth, we haven't gotten there yet. And we're going to get into the dimensions of wealth. We're going to get into the dimensions of assets and what that really, really looks like. So guess what? She had assets. She had accumulated wealth. She was benefiting and earning an income off of the things that she had built and earned, her businesses, her real estate, her boarding houses. But she didn't have the main foundational principle. And you know what that is? Protection. I don't care if you have 2 nickels, you better protect it. Because in this woman's life, this was an unforeseen circumstance. She did everything right. She did not have a formal education, yet she was wealthier than most white people in her community, in her neighborhood. But she did not have protections. Now, when we get into the foundations of building wealth and we talk about what's first, second, third, and fourth, we're going to get into that. But this is an amazing story, but it's also a tragedy. And I believe it's something that we can learn from. So I wanted to talk with you about Mary Ellen Pleasant. Now let's move on to my next favorite lady. She's my favorite lady, I would say. And her name is, and I want to make sure that I'm not covering up the slide. Her name is Sarah Breedlove, also known as Madam C.J. Walker. I know you guys know who she is, right? I know you know who she is. So she is the she's the main character, or the only character, if you will, in the most recently released movie called Self-Made. I don't know if anybody has seen the movie Self-Made, but she is one of the first. Now, she has been noted as the first self-made millionaire. And honestly, I didn't think she was, because of Mrs. Mary Ellen Pleasant's story. But I imagine she's considered the first self-made millionaire, maybe because she did retain her assets and she didn't, end up in court having to dispute what was hers. So in terms of the legitimacy of her wealth and the legitimacy of her legacy and what she left behind, she is considered the first self-made Black female millionaire. And her life is amazing. I need you all to understand that for those of you who have ever aspired to own anything, start a business, sell anything, empower other people, dream about owning something big and being an innovator and a pioneer in your community, she is going to be the poster child for any of those aspirations. 100%. 100%. And let's talk about her for a little while. And we're going to go back. Again, we're going to go back to these two examples later on in our presentation. But listen to this. Now, Miss Pleasant earned her wealth and built her empire in the 1800s. Madam C.J. Walker comes along in the mid 1900s. So listen, this is still considered the 20th century. This is the 20th century. This is early 20th century, but it's the 20th century. She built an empire in the mid 1900s. She founded her business in 1905. Now listen to this. She built an empire in the mid 1900s. Listen to this. She founded her business in 1905. So what am I trying to say? What is my point? My point is that she did not build an empire at the same time she founded her business. When you found a business, or you start a business, or you begin to build your dream and you begin to realize your dreams, it takes building blocks. Businesses grow in stages. Businesses grow in stages. So she founded her business in 1905, but listen to this. She built an empire in the mid 1900s. So what does that tell you? That tells you, listen, you cannot expect success overnight. In that process, you may have to start all over again. You may have to change directions. You may have to retool your resources. You may have to retool your team. You may have to go back and get a certification to learn to do something. You may have to hire someone that has a skill set that you need to expand and grow your business. But the point I'm trying to make with those 2 points is this. She did not have an empire at the inception of her business. She grew her business. Now, she was the first manufacturer among African-American women. See, this is the thing that blows my mind about this story. Not only did she start a business, she started a manufacturing company. A manufacturing company. It's difficult to hire and pay 10 employees, let alone 200. She became a manufacturer of hair products. Right? She started out with an idea. Then she grew a team. She created demand for her product such that she had to go into production. Can you imagine something that you offer, or something that you sell, or something that you make? You create such a demand for it that you got to hire 200 people to make it for you. Can you imagine that? Huh. That is a thought. That's a thought. I mean, it might take me a few days to wrap my mind around that. I might have to go back on my knees and pray and say, okay, God, I need you to give me that vision again. I need you to clarify that vision, because I want that kind of vision. I want the kind of vision that says I need to go hire 200 people, because there are millions of people that want my product all over the US. That's the kind of vision that I want. This is the kind of vision that she had. And I would dare to submit that she envisioned this for herself. In the mid 1900s, early 1900s, you don't just wake up and decide to have a manufacturing company. That has got to be a God-given vision. So she had a manufacturing company of hair products. Guess what she did? She mastered direct sales and marketing. Listen, people that are able to do direct sales, I envy them. It takes a level of tenacity and confidence and understanding people to be successful in direct sales. And she did it. She did it. Listen to this. She built a workforce of 200 employees. Let me share some of them with you internally without compromising too much proprietary information. I have a client right now whose 2-year strategy is to grow their workforce by 200 employees. And I'll tell you the long story short of it. It is challenging to find 200 people that can do exactly what you want them to do. And as a consultant, that's why I'm there to support this particular company. But a point I'm trying to make is she did it. In 2021, I have clients right now that desire to ultimately grow their workforce by 50, 100, and 200 people, and it's challenging. She was able to get 200 committed minds, willing bodies to adopt a corporate philosophy and vision such that she created a labor force of 200 employees. Now, you want to talk about duplicating. She didn't just duplicate. She multiplied by 200. This is the concept of wealth. We'll get into that a little bit later. She created opportunities for her community. So I'm not just selling and taking checks to the bank. I have extensively evaluated my business model. I've extensively evaluated the quality of my product. I've extensively evaluated the margin and the profit margin opportunity such that I can confidently bring you on board and know that if you apply the methods that I share, you're going to be successful. Because listen, you don't want to bring people into your business and what you're doing unless you know 100% that this model is going to work. That if you do this, you're going to see success. Why? Because your name and your reputation is on the line. So she was able to create a product, a business model, a sales strategy that others could learn and duplicate to the point that she grew her workforce by 200. This happened 100 years before we got here. Well, not 100 years before we got here, but 100 years before now. I guess that would make us babies if that was 100 years before we got here, right? But this happened in the early 1900s. It's inspiring. Here's her quote. There is no royal flower strewn path to success. For whatever success I have attained has been the result of much hard work and many sleepless nights. I'm going to go to my full presentation screen so that y'all can get the full benefit of the screens. So let's move on. And I believe that we are recording because I know a few folks are going to want to see this. So just want to make sure we are, and I believe that we are. So let's talk about wealth, and let's just talk about what the landscape looks like. I just want to share a couple of facts with you because I believe that the wealth gap is an issue. It's an issue in our society. I believe that while the wealth gap will probably sustain for a very long period of time, even beyond our years on this earth, I do believe that the needle should move in certain areas. I do believe that. So listen to this. Single Black women are 6 times less likely to own stocks and bonds than white men. Single Black women are 50% less likely to own a home. Black women own businesses at a rate that's 25 times lower than single white men. And by the way, these are 2 broad disparities. This is why the comparison between Black women and white men are being used, I believe, based on the research. Black women are paid 35% less than white men and 15% less than white women. 1 million Black women, and that's a typo, by Goldman Sachs, is an initiative to increase the economic opportunity for Black women. Kudos to Goldman Sachs. But the point that I want to make with this is these numbers are indicative of where we stand with our wealth. Okay, we build wealth. What does that mean? We have the capability of doing it. There's a methodology and approach to being able to do it. So when I say we build wealth, we do build wealth, but we need to build it more. We need to build it more. And there are some ways that we can get in the game right away. Okay, so let's talk about that. So let's continue to talk about the landscape. The United States has the highest level of income inequality among 7 countries. So when you look at the top 7 countries, and in that was like Germany, Portuguese, there were a lot of different countries, just 7, but we have the highest level of inequality, meaning that wealth gap was larger and wider than our neighboring countries. The Black and white income gap is persistent. Black Americans' household incomes have increased, listen to this, only by $9,200 in the time span of 1970 to 2018. I can't. That it's hard to fathom that that's a real fact, but it is. Black Americans' household incomes have only increased by $9,200. How many years is 1970 to 2018? It is at least 42 years. It's at least 42 years. Okay. Let's see. We have a chat. I want to make sure I get your chats. Wow. That's exactly right. Wow. Can you believe that? So listen, we see advertisements on TV. We see our friends on Facebook with cars and leveling up and all of these wonderful things. But when we look at ourselves as a community and what we've done since the 70s, that's the heels of the civil rights era, our household incomes should have definitely increased by more. So let's look at that. The median Black household income was only 61% of the median white household income. This was recorded in 2018. Only up from 56% in 1970. Again, our numbers, I told you, I believe the needle should have moved or should be moving more. Again, this is up from 1970. Our household income was 56% of our white counterparts in 1970. It is now a whopping 5% more as of 2018. Collectively, something is missing. So again, women build wealth, but we need to build it more. The wealth income gap is growing wider. There was a lot more data that I could share, a lot more slides regarding the percentages and the breakdown of that, but understand that the less wealthy and lower income households collectively, that number dropped more. And the wealthier households, our white counterparts, or those that had achieved a certain level of wealth at a certain wealth level, their wealth ratios increased. So the wealth gap, the wealth and income gap has grown wider and continues to grow wider. Let's see if I can go to the next slide. Okay. Is wealth achievable for everyone? Well, that is a subjective answer, and it is also a subjective question. I believe that it is achievable for everyone, but I believe that your circumstances can cause you to be at different places financially at different periods of your life. For example, you have individuals that are immensely wealthy, but there are periods of time where they were either homeless or they were not financially stable. So everyone at some point in their time has experienced a different stage of financial stability or economic positioning. And I'm not talking about folks that were born into money. I'm talking about individuals that have achieved wealth, When you think about the term of achieving, you're not thinking about someone that was born into it or that was fed with a silver spoon or someone that, was born into a legacy or an inherited wealth. So John chapter 12, verse 8 says, the poor, and these are Jesus's words, the poor you will always have with you. Now listen to this. Therefore, I command you, you shall open wide your hand to your brother, to the needy, and to the poor in your land. And I would underscore that and submit that we should not just give to our brother that's in need, but give them tools, give them resources, give them knowledge, give them information. This is how we help our brother. This is how we not just put a Band-Aid on the situation. We have to be intuitive and innovative about how we can address the wealth gap in our communities. And I think the very, very first way to do that is to become wealthy yourself, is to become financially stable yourself, is to become financially resourceful yourself. That's the first way you do it. You start with one household at a time. So listen to this. Wealth is not finite. It's not objective. It's more so a mindset that guides decisions and actions. It is not objective, right? It's a process. It's subjective. It's going to depend on timing, opportunity, and decisions. It's all of these things collectively, and we'll continue to talk about that. All right. So let's see where we are. All right. So where do we start in the discussion of wealth? Where do we start? Well, we want to have a sense of, what is wealth and what is it not? What wealth is and what it is not, right? We want to also look at our financial and economic profile. Now, keep in mind, it's just like when you go to church and the preacher or the pastor preaches a very tough word. Sometimes when you have to look at yourself in the mirror, it's a very difficult process, but it is ultimately good for you and you will be better because of it. So I will apply the same principle. When you take a look at your personal finances and your economic profile, it may be difficult to look at it. It may be, may not be. Whatever the case is, you'll be better as a result of it. Okay. So you need to also be prepared and ready to commit to learning. Learn principles, learn concepts, learn a skill, learn what you need to learn to catapult yourself into the next level of financial security. Because that's the first way that you can enter into the space of wealth. If you're not financially stable, there's no need to discuss investments or asset accumulation. There's just a methodology and approach to doing this. Okay. So you have to also start with creating a plan for yourself or with a professional that you trust. All right. And then you want to execute your plan with tactical solutions. What does that mean? When you determine a solution or an activity, that activity should be able to directly, we have another person coming in, that activity should be able to directly address the goal. So when you execute a plan, your plan should include tactical solutions or activities. Now, those tactical solutions should address the how-to of your financial goals. And we'll get into that. And again, for a 90-minute, 1-hour presentation, this is so comprehensive. I literally could break apart 4 separate classes in this one presentation. So just digest it, let it marinate, inbox me, think of some questions that we can discuss in our chat. Okay. So again, I cannot emphasize this enough. Execute your plan with tactical solutions, right? Now listen to this. We can talk about the business side of accumulating wealth, but there's also a mental side of accumulating wealth, right? We are products of our environment. If we never grew up talking about money or investments or checking accounts or managing businesses, it's not going to be natural to us, right? So we may develop some mindsets that may be opposing to, guess what? Discipline. And discipline is not always about having bad credit or overspending. It could be about the fact that you haven't made a decision to begin investing systemically. It could be about the fact that you haven't made a decision to be brave enough to start that business or be brave enough to write that business plan. Okay. So we want to check our qualities along the way. I would ask, what is your mindset? right? What is your mindset as it pertains to building wealth? What is your mindset as it pertains to being wealthy? What is your mindset as it pertains to pursuing wealth and pursuing assets? So let's continue on. And as I mentioned, these are nuggets. This is comprehensive. What I would like you to do is I want you to take notes down. And I want you to, jot notes for yourself for later. And I want you to, go in and research some of these concepts, research some of these principles, follow up with questions, schedule a meeting with your own advisor, with your own business consultant or whomever, and begin to work through some of these ideas. So in committing to your goals, right, you have to be able to categorize what is first, second, third, and fourth in your life, in your business, and in your finances. You have to, you have to kind of take it step by step. You can't overwhelm yourself with identifying long-term hefty goals without first prioritizing what comes first, right? Because when you take care of the priorities, it gives way for you to take the next step and reach another dimension of planning and pursuing goals. So what are your short-term goals? What are your long-term goals? What are the things that you absolutely are going to address in the first 3 months? In 3 months, I will accomplish these things right here. Because I know if I don't accomplish these things, I cannot move into my goals for the next 3 to 6 months and then the next 6 to 12 months. So what are your short-term goals? Those are going to be goals that you want to accomplish in 1 year or less. Those are goals that you want to accomplish in 1 year or less. And again, within that first year, you are able to narrow those goals down the first 3 months, the next 3 months, and the next 3 months. You can break that down into quarterly goals. A lot of individuals will break their goals down into quarters, and they will say, okay, here are my first quarter goals. And that's typically what I do. When I come into a new year, I have already determined what it is that I really do need to already be doing by March, by the end of March. That's first quarter. We're already looking at spring and the end of March. That is 1/4 of your year that's already gone. So there's no more Happy New Year. By the time you get to the end of March, you're done with the first quarter. And I would behoove you to identify what you want to get jump started with that first quarter, because typically once you hit your first quarter goals, you are building momentum. And it's usually very difficult to do that because you have so many things that you want to do. But I would employ you to look at your short-term and long-term goals. Now, guess what? With every single goal, and this is going to be homework, I would even challenge you all to do this. I would challenge you all to identify your goals, and then on one sheet of paper, identify your short-term goals. Just work on short-term goals first. But guess what I would like you to do? Take the next sheet of paper, a blank sheet of paper, and write the first short-term goal. And under that first short-term goal, identify your plan of action to support that goal. What does that mean? What is involved in this goal being accomplished? Who do I need to call? How much money do I need? What credentials do I need to pursue? What class do I need to take? Who needs to be on my team? What speakers do I need to hire? What contractors do I need? What graphics do I need? What do I need a website? What are the costs associated with this? What is your plan for that goal? And then guess what? Get another blank sheet of paper. Write the next goal down. This is all within your first year or less goals. Another sheet of paper, write the next goal down, and then write the plan to support that goal. Every goal has to have a plan of attack. It can't just be, this is my goal. You have to articulate it, identify it, because guess what? It's going to help you to uncover the barriers. I don't care how simple the goal is. I promise you, there is a barrier or there's an opportunity for that goal to not happen. Whether it's willpower, whether it's, I forgot it on my calendar, I forgot, whether it's lack of organization, whether it's lack of resources, whatever the case is, it's very, very easy to fail to hit your goals. That's why it's necessary to do a plan of action. So write a plan of action for every single goal. And once you identify the plan for each goal, okay, I can move on to my intermediate goals. That's going to be 3, that's going to be 1 year to 3 year, or 1 year to 5 year, however you want to do that. I would say 1 to 3 years, your intermediate goal. So goals that you want to accomplish in year 2 through 5, or years 2 through 3, or years 2 through 4. All right. And then your long-term goals are going to be 5 years and out. 5 years and out is going to be your long-term goals. Every goal that you identify, there needs to be a plan to support how you're going to meet that goal. And this is even financial. This even has to do with wealth, because we're talking about the foundation. We're talking about the fact that we cannot begin to make, and I'm using street language a little bit here, but we cannot make boss moves without doing the foundational work. See, everything that when you see the finished product, you have to know that there's some ugly behind that. There's some planning behind that. There's some failures behind that. There's some discipline behind that. There's some research behind that. There's some learning behind that. And it starts right here. It starts with writing a plan to support each and every goal that you have. So when you think about it, go ahead and write it down. And I would even, I love the vision parties, but I would even submit that a goal party might be more effective and impactful than just a vision party, because that goal party says, okay, I'm identifying a plan for each of these goals, right? Now listen to this. Have you identified any potential risk that may threaten your success? Again, if you don't identify the plan, you're not exploring the risk. Let me insert something really quick right here. When businesses do strategic planning and they determine what decisions they're going to make for their business, whether the growth of it or the expansion of it or the downsizing of it, they do something called a SWOT analysis. They evaluate risk and things that threaten their success. Well, you are your own personal enterprise. You have to do the same thing. When you identify what your goals are, you have to measure any potential risk that might prevent you from hitting those goals. And guess what? Sometimes they might be relationships. Sometimes they might be people. Sometimes they may be collaborations that you need to resolve or dissolve, excuse me. Okay, so let's move away from that slide and move to the next one. Let me make sure we don't have any typos here. We are all educated English speaking people. All right, so what is wealth? What is wealth? When I think of wealth, when I was a little girl and I thought about wealth, honestly, y'all, I thought about buying 1,000 pairs of shoes. Any kind of shoe I wanted. I was, growing up, I didn't have the privilege of having different types of shoes, different styles. I mean, it was like, if you have a pair of sneakers, be glad you got a pair of sneakers, and you wear them until you need another pair. When I was a little girl, I envisioned wealth being able to just buy whatever I wanted at mass amounts. No feeling of limitation, no feeling of I don't have. And I don't even think I knew what that was, but I would ask you, as you've lived your life and you've worked and you've partnered and you've lived in your communities and worked in your communities, what is your understanding, knowledge, or thought about wealth? Do you feel like it's something you can achieve in your lifetime? Do you feel like you're worthy of it? Do you feel that, it just skipped by your generation? Do you feel like it doesn't happen for people like me? Do you feel like I should have it and I'm not going to stop until I get it? What is your position toward wealth? What does that mean for you? It means a lot for a lot of different people, but I want to give you some foundational thoughts behind it so that you recognize what it does, so that when you are wrapping your mind around having a wealth mindset and accumulating wealth and building wealth, you will know the characteristics of wealth. So let's start. Wealth is essentially the accumulation of assets, which produces income or increased value without need of additional investments of time, money, or labor. Now, this is a scientific definition, and we'll get into some other things here shortly. But essentially, a person who is wealthy or an organization that is heavily liquid and financially solvent, that would be the version of a business or organization being wealthy, is having accumulated, gathered or collected or earned assets, which then produce an income stream, revenue, or those assets that are collected appreciate in their value or worth. So I purchased a set of assets in 2018 and I paid this amount for them, but they have now increased in their value in 2021. That is what assets do. This is a characteristic of wealth. So when you own something that appreciates in its value or its worth, you are experiencing a characteristic of wealth. If you own something that produces income on its own without you working, without you exchanging your time for its income, without you having to barter as an equal exchange of anything, and without any need of, listen to this, additional investment of time, money, or labor, you are experiencing a quality of wealth. That's an asset. If you don't have assets, you probably don't have wealth. So that's what assets do. When you accumulate assets, this is what it does. It's going to produce income for you while you sleep, while you go jog, while you go to the business meeting, while you go to church, while you, cut the grass. It's going to produce income because it's an asset. It's going to increase in value. If you purchase that asset today, in 10 years, it should be worth a lot more, unless it's impacted by the market. But any market always recovers over time. So anytime you invest in anything, you have to understand the timing of things. But it's going to appreciate and grow in its value. This is a characteristic of wealth. Now, I want to tell you something. This is my definition, because I have worked as a financial advisor for many years. I have been a licensed financial educator. I have been a business consultant, and I've worked with people's money. I've invested money. I've advised people on what they need to do with their money. I've seen what the market does, and I've experienced working in this space. So this is the definition that I have created for you on today. However, you can experience it yourself. You don't have to take my definition. I dare you to buy an asset. I dare you to accumulate assets and watch it do exactly what I just said. Now, you can go online and you can look up definitions and you will see varying definitions. I think I saw a definition that said, I didn't fully agree with it, but I just want you to trust me and understand that wealth is the accumulation of assets, and it is the experience of those assets producing a passive income. That means you're not directly involved in the income and the benefit that you receive from having those assets. So that's what wealth does. Those are the characteristics of wealth. So exciting, and it's so achievable. So wealth building, let's talk about passive income a little bit more. And I know we had another person join. Charlotte Williams, welcome. Spartans in the house. Forgot I'm recording. Let me bring it in. So passive income. So listen, what are some, this is exciting to me, everybody. This is super, super exciting. We work our whole life. We clock in from 8 to 5. And at the end of that week or the end of that month, we receive that paycheck. We receive a value for our time, a value for our labor. We receive a value for our intellect. Mind you, we don't receive a check that represents our value because we know our value, but we receive a value, the value that job or position gives us. But can you imagine that you can amass passive income as much as you can obtain, as much as you can manage, and as much as you can build, that will generate income that is not based on your time or your labor or you exchanging your intellect or the use of your intellect, knowledge, or skill for what we call a paycheck, right? So what does passive income do? And how can you earn it? You can earn passive income from dividends from investments, okay? When you invest in the stock market, or you invest in mutual funds, or you invest in any number of vehicles, you can earn dividends from investments. Now, typically you earn dividends from stocks, from equities. When you take your money and you invest it into corporations that are publicly traded on the exchanges. You can also earn passive income through, listen to this, income and interest from cash or liquid investments. What do I mean by that? Liquid investments are investments that are not tied to the stock market, but they are assigned a set interest rate. Now, those of you who have bank accounts know that if you go into the bank, those interest rates are very, very, very low. But you do have other liquid investments that earn a higher level of interest. It will require sometimes a higher investment, and it may also require that you leave those funds in for a longer period of time. But you can earn passive income from liquid investments that you mostly find in bank products, not investment products, but bank products, CDs, money market accounts, long-term CDs. So the longer term, the longer you hold your money with a bank, they'll give you a little bit of a higher interest rate, and you would have to invest a lot more with them or put more of your money in those accounts in order to accumulate, in my opinion, a notable amount of passive income. But it is another tool. Okay, how about this? Interest payments from federal, government, corporate, or municipal bonds. It's another tool. It's another vehicle. This is all accessible to you. These are ways that you can work on duplicating your efforts. I go to work for 40 hours a week and I earn a paycheck. But if I begin to systemically invest my money into other ways of not only accumulating assets, but guess what? My assets are going to start working for me. My assets are going to start working for me. If I build them enough and I am consistent, the assets will work for you. What do you want to do? You want to ultimately, this is real wealth. You want to ultimately accumulate enough assets that, guess what? You replace your income. You want to replace your income. Or you want to be financially secure enough that if that particular job says your intellectual value is no longer wanted here, or your time for money is no longer something we can afford, or we're deciding to downsize, or we are eliminating your department, or we are no longer offering this product that you sell, so we can't keep you on board, you want to create financial security. This is why it is important for women to build wealth. It's not about the leveling up or the image. It is about true financial stability. If I go to bed at night and I know that I have assets that are earning money for me, and that eventually those assets are going to replace my need to clock in every day, there is no greater security than that. And this is what we need to be working toward in our building phase. What is a building phase? If you're able to get up and go to work and earn an income, you should also be building wealth. If you're able to get up and clock in at a 9-to-5 job, you should also be building wealth. When you get your paycheck, something should be going into an investment. When you get your paycheck, something should be going into a savings, because you're working to level the playing field. Yes, I need my job to make a paycheck, but I'm also building. I'm building wealth, and I'm going to build my wealth to the point that my wealth and my assets can replace my need for a 9-to-5 job. Yes, it sounds idealistic, but this is the mindset. This is the point of it. This is why we do it. Because if you work for a corporation, you do realize that a corporation is a business, and a business is an investment. Businesses are exposed to all kinds of external environmental factors that can cause them to belly up. It can cause them to downsize. It can cause them to close. It can cause them to have to liquidate and shut down. And what happens to you and your job? So even when you decide to work for corporate America or work for that job that you love so much, you don't realize it, but the security that you think you have, you don't really have. because this is a capitalistic nation. Our economy is fully supported on capitalism. That means that if we are able to successfully sell the products and services that we offer, then our company can earn a revenue and then we can pay our employees. But the point at which that company's services and products are no longer marketable, for whatever the case may be, it could be coronavirus, it could be a war, it could be anything, then there goes our job. There goes our financial stability. So it behooves us to always have a plan to build wealth. So let's continue on. We talked about interest payments from federal, government, corporate, and municipal bonds. These are ways to grow and build and experience passive income. Also, rental payments on rental properties. If you do the research, there are opportunities to buy properties that are much lower than what the normal market would predict. Meaning you can buy rental property, own that property, and you've purchased it for one amount, but the true value of it, if you were to sell it, is much higher. That's an investment. We talked about when you acquire an asset, over time, it grows in appreciation and value. That means that you can sell it for more than what you purchased it for. That's called profit. So assets have that characteristic as well, profit. So rental payments, let's say you decide to get into real estate investing, or you just want to earn, you want to create passive income through real estate. You can do that. And the longer you hold those properties, it's suggested that real estate increase in its value at least by 3% every year. So, in theory, real estate is another opportunity to create passive income. And it's an asset because it has the characteristics of wealth. And what is that? It appreciates in value. It can create passive income without you exchanging your time or money once you have purchased it. And I'm not talking about, fixing the house up and getting it ready for market and things like that. I'm just talking about after you make that initial investment. Also, affiliate marketing. This is a term in, the last, I guess I would say 25 to 30 years that a lot of people are afraid of, but I want to share something with you. Affiliate marketing has a lot to do with duplicating yourself. It's a principle of wealth. It's a principle of wealth. And it's another creative way that people are earning passive income. It takes a lot of work up front, and it takes a lot of ongoing work that I don't have not necessarily cared for the nature of how you build and create wealth. But affiliate marketing has to do with duplicating yourself and scaling yourself, because it really deals with the person and duplicating your efforts by growing a team. Affiliate marketing. And then there's compounded interest. So what is compounded interest? You purchase an asset, or you have an asset, or grow an asset. And guess what? That asset begins to grow interest. And guess what? Now that interest is earning interest. So that is what I mean when I say your assets begin to work for you. This is why it is so important to have assets, to accumulate assets. Do I have any questions so far in the chat? I want to make sure that I address your questions. Okay. All right. So I hope you're taking notes. I hope you're prepared to ask some good questions and write some plans and identify, what do you have in your portfolio? And we're going to get into that. Again, this presentation is literally 3 to 4 classes in one. We're just hitting the highlights. Now, when it comes to looking at wealth, we need to go ahead and do a quick, what you call financial checkup. And it may not be so quick, but we need to look at our opportunity. What is our opportunity size? What are the areas that we need to grow in? What do we need to shore up? What do we need to change? What are the things that we can do right away? Or what are the things we can plan to do? So we want to look at our cash flow monthly. What is our cash flow? What does that mean? Okay, when I look at all the money that comes into my account, that comes into my checking account, all the money that comes into my household, what exactly is happening with that money? Where is it going? Is there money that's still paying for subscriptions that I've forgotten about? Am I paying for a monthly premium on my auto insurances, and perhaps I need to get that reevaluated to get that reduced by a certain percentage? Am I paying too much on my car note? Is the interest rate too high? Do I need to refinance it with my credit union? What's happening with my cash flow? How much money do I have after all of my bills are paid? Do I have any money after all of my bills are paid? These are the foundational conversations that we need to have, because until you have these conversations, you cannot have conversations about accumulating wealth. It's just not going to work. It will not work, and it'll be too much pressure and it will fall apart. But this is step one. What is my cash flow? Now, when you look at your cash flow and you look at what do you have left after you pay your bills and your expenses, and let's be real, ladies, we like to shop. We like, before COVID, I was the one that would be in a women's fellowship all day. I was the one that would have a prayer breakfast. I would lead one myself or plan one myself, or I'd have 4 prayer breakfasts on my calendar every weekend, or I'd have 3 or 4 women's retreats on my calendar. So we like to do things which does take money. The reality is you can still experience that if you plan for it. But if those activities butt against your goals and butt against your threshold for saving, then you'll have to make some choices, if you will. So how does the cash flow impact your budgeting or your ability to save? This is why we want to look at your cash flow. We want to look at the cash flow because we want to understand the implication behind your ability to save. Okay. What is your debt load? What is your debt load? So there's a difference between debt and monthly bills. Your monthly bills are just ongoing. If you want to be able to turn your light switch on and see lights, you're going to have to pay that utility. If you want, if you prefer to have a landline as well as your mobile phone, you're going to have to pay that utility. Or, if you, are a health fanatic and you absolutely want to be able to go to the gym, then you'll have to pay that subscription. If you, if you have to have cable or some other means of entertainment, then you'll have to pay that subscription. Whatever the case may be, those are your bills. That's your monthly, those are just your monthly, what we call expenses. But what is your debt load? That means that when I look at everything that I own, everything that my name is on, what percentage of it do I owe and to whom? So I live in I guess I would say a decent sized house, and my name is on the deed along with my husband. But if you ask me who owns it or what do I owe on it, I'd have to give you a debt balance. So when you look at your debt load, you want to look at, okay, what do I own versus what do I owe? How much money am I paying on debt? And what is the plan to reduce that? Right? Now, what is your net worth? Your net worth essentially is taking a look at everything that you own: cars, houses, real estate, land, accounts, what have you. And then you want to subtract everything that you owe: debt balances, credit balances, anything that you're paying a loan on, a line on, any debt that you might have. You want to tally that up and you want to subtract that from the value of what you own. So if everything that you own is $500,000, right? And then you compare that to what you owe on those things, you want to subtract that out. Let's say that you owe $250,000 on all of the things that you own, then your net worth will be $250,000. Now, that goes into the implication of wealth, because the more you own, the more assets you own, where you don't owe anything to anybody, you're experiencing a greater degree of wealth and ownership. And it's an ideal place to be. And not everybody is in that, because everybody wants to own a home, so they get a mortgage, but you can work toward that level of freedom and paying off that debt. And there are ways that you can absolutely do it. So let's talk about the characteristics of wealth. We're going to veer back just a little bit. I want to make sure that I am in the right order. Passive income, we talked about that. We talked about the financial checkup. All right, so I want to say that this slide should have probably been right up here, probably got out of order, but let's just talk about this slide and we're going to continue on our conversation with the financial checkup. But going back to wealth and the characteristics, it's duplicable, right? So when you think of a person that is building wealth and you think of a person that is on the path to building wealth, you're going to probably see duplication somewhere in there. You're going to see duplication. We talked about compounded interest. We talked about your assets working for you. You're going to see duplication. Scalable, that's another characteristic. What does that mean? That means that, let's say I start a business here in Greensboro. The business is successful, great demand for the business. I've mastered my business model. I decide to open up several other chains. Then I take it to another state and another state and another state. That's scalable. That basically is duplication, but more, instead of duplicating, you're looking at really maximizing that opportunity. You're basically taking that business model and you are creating that same business, that same concept in other places, either through by franchising or business partnership, or just simply opening up additional businesses or creating additional businesses that are similar or exactly like that, in addition to what you already have. So when you think about a scalable business, your question is going to be, can this business grow? If I don't want to, let's say, duplicate this business through franchising, can I scale it and grow it and make it bigger? Can I expand my market? Can I serve more people? Can I handle a larger client load? Is it scalable? Is this expandable? Is this something that someone can copy or duplicate? So, when you think of creating and starting a business, you have several different approaches. You can start a business that you yourself want to do yourself, where it's more of a sole proprietorship and doesn't rely on employees or won't rely on you, scaling it, if you will. Or you can start a business that you say, you know what, I do want to scale this. Let me change a few things up. I do want to grow this business. I would like to have a market in another city. I would like to have a market presence in another state. I would like to expand this opportunity to others that are interested in investing in a business now that I have a proven business model that works, right? So what's another characteristic? It produces passive income. We talked about that. It appreciates in value, and it maintains value, right? And it can be liquidated for cash value. So any asset can be liquidated for cash value. That means I own something that's worth something, and if I were to sell it, that's the cash value, or the value or the market value of that. All right, so let's jump back to our conversation about the financial checkup. We talked about all of the different things that we need to consider. Well, let's look at this here. So if we were to look at a personal financial statement, it might look something like this. When you write down what your finances look like, okay, you might write down something that looks like this. So you're going to start with all the income that you have, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't have to be on a graph. It could be just on a sheet of paper with a pencil. You want to go ahead and take a look at what are all of my sources of income. So let's say that you are an entrepreneur, and let's just say that you're earning passive income. Or let's just say that folks, they're ordering from your business online passively, right? In addition to your full-time job, in addition to your check from the military, in addition to, maybe a stipend from something that, you're participating in or what have you. All of your monthly income, you want to go ahead and list it. You want to total it up. And then you want to look at all of your expenses. Now listen to this. That includes your bills and your debt. So under the category of expenses, it includes your bills and your debt. You want to go ahead and tally all that up. Now, when you look at the difference, you're going to see a difference here. This person is taking in more income than they are expenses. So now they're able to ask themselves, okay, it looks like I'm, retaining income after all of my bills are paid. What do I want to do with the surplus? Now, when you look at this list here of expenses, I always advise that you go ahead and insert savings. Go ahead and insert savings. Go ahead and insert any charitable giving. Go ahead and insert your investments. Go ahead and insert it in your budget already so that you can systemically take it out, so that you know that you are accountable to those things that you've listed that you want to do. And that's what I would do. Identify, once we get into the investment strategy and what you're going to look at doing, I would go ahead and put it in the budget and go ahead and create a systemic way to commit to those savings and investing goals. Once you, of course, do this, because when you do this exercise right here, if if it doesn't look right, in other words, if the expenses tally up to be more than the income, we have some foundational things we have to address. And I really believe that I'm not the only one in the room when I say I've been there. So this is what you want to do. You want to look at this first, and this is where it starts. Because when you think about entrepreneurship and you think about wanting to invest in a business or wanting to invest in building a business, what's involved in that? Inventory, marketing, supplies, ongoing expenses, website, all of these different things. So we have to be absolutely and 100% cognizant of our personal finances. Now, the subject of getting a business loan could very well come up. Now, when you go to a traditional bank, all traditional banks have traditional underwriting. And, getting a business loan on day one of starting your business, it's pretty difficult to do unless you're going to be the guarantee and use your own credit. So more than likely, you'll have to take out your personal loans or personal lines of credit to finance a business if you don't have the liquidity or the assets to do it yourself. So what is my point? My point is, before we really get into accumulating assets so that we can live in that state of mind of wealth, we've got to come right here and really look at our financial selves in the mirror and just see what our capabilities are. This is an exercise that is so needed, and it's so necessary to really, really create a good plan of action to move yourself from where you are to where you desire to be. Believe it or not, guys, I have 7 slides, and I cannot believe that I have been talking almost an hour and I still have 7 slides left. So I appreciate y'all hanging in there with me, and I hope that you have questions or comments. So here's another thing that we need to do. After you've taken a look at your cash flow and you have included all the expenses, right? Look at your average cost for fuel, look at your average cost for groceries, look at those incidentals. And the way that you want to do this is you want to get your sheet and paper out. You want to go get your bank statements. That's going to really be the telltale sign of what's happening with your money. And really, what are you needing for different aspects of your budget? What are you needing for your groceries? What are you needing for fuel? What are you needing for the children's expenses? What are you really needing in your extracurricular activities? And that's going to help you really determine what goes on that budget and how much money you're really left over to invest in, and that sort of thing. One of the other things you want to do is just take a look at your net worth. We already talked about this. We talked about listing all your assets here on the left, the value of your home, right? So I own a home. My home is worth $325,000. Boom, let me write that down. That's an asset. Value of your vehicle. Okay, I have a car. If I were to sell it today, I could probably get about X number of dollars for that. That's the value of your car. Checking and savings accounts balances. You want to really, you want to look at your average checking account balance, because we all know that your checking account is really an account that's extremely fluid. Money goes in and money goes out quite a bit. So you want to really look at your assets in your checking and savings, look at your cash, look at CDs, and look at your investment and retirement accounts, right? Now you want to total those values up, and then you want to subtract out, as I said before, your liabilities, the balance on any debts, right? So your mortgage, credit cards, loans, student loans, or any other things that you owe in the way of debt. This is how you determine your net worth. Now, here is a clue. The higher that net worth number is, the closer you are to truly owning everything that you have. Just because it is in your name doesn't mean you own it yet. And the telltale sign is, look at your numbers on your liabilities. So when you look at those liabilities, if that number is about as equal to the assets, then yes, your name is on it, but you are a far cry away from owning it. And there's nothing wrong with that, because that culturally has been the American way. We get a loan for our house, we get a loan for our car, we get a loan for our education. That's what we've done. But again, a wealth mindset says, I'm going to be gradually reducing my debt, and I'm going to be gradually increasing my assets. Why? Because my assets have the power of duplication. My assets are going to earn interest and dividends, and that interest is going to earn interest. So the money will begin working for me and offsetting me trading my time for money or a paycheck. So these are the realities of our world, but it doesn't mean it has to be like this for the rest of our lives. We have to implement a plan to begin combating some of these systemic things that keep our wealth and our assets low. And it starts with really taking an evaluation of it all, right? So here's another slide, right? These are all the things we own on the left: house, car, savings, retirement accounts, student loans, credit card balances. Well, student loans are not assets, so I don't want to be confused with that. But the house, cars, retirement funds, those are all assets. And the debts are going to be, the student loans and the credit card balances. But look at the values of these things, right? So you've got, you've got the value listed on one side, and then you've got the debt listed on the other. So again, if my home is worth $300,000, but I owe a mortgage balance of $250,000, what do I really own in the way of value? $50,000. I have a house that's worth $300,000, but the true asset, the equity of what I have, what I could take away, what I could, as they say, take to the bank, is 50 grand. I own a car. It's a very nice car. It's a decent car. Right now it's worth $40,000, but I owe the car loan company $38,000. Where's my real equity in that situation? Only $2,000. So the point, what am I trying to say? It looks nice to own stuff, but when you pull the covers back and you don't really own anything, we know we got to keep working. And that's what we want to work toward. We want to work to increase this third column called equity. Equity means this. Equity means I own the full value of the thing that I possess. I possess a house that's worth $3,000. I own the whole $3,000. I own a car that's worth $35,000. I own the full value of that car. There's no loan company that can take my car from me. Okay. Now, when you get into actual investment accounts, unless you take out a loan against your assets, you're going to own the full value of those. Okay. You have a savings account for $2,000. You own the full value of that. You have a mutual fund retirement account that's worth $35,000. You own the full value of that. Right. So then you have your debts. Look at this. I still have student loan balances. I still have credit card balances. Now, the $50,000 in equity on the house to $2,000 in value on the equity on the car. And look at this. Car number 2 has a negative equity. What does that mean? We've all been in that situation. I buy a car. I drive that car for 5-6 years. It starts to go bad on me. I need another car. I take it in to get traded, and the car's not even worth what I owe on it. I owe more on the car than the thing is even worth. So we have to know the difference between assets. A car is not an asset, by the way, if I did not say that. A car is not an asset. This is just a list of things that you own. And you see this title, it says asset, but let me tell you why a car is not an asset. This is a slide that probably should have had a little note at the bottom, and I didn't create this, by the way. But the reason why a car is not an asset is because a car does not appreciate in value unless you purchase one of those, I guess you can call them like trade show cars that appreciate in value. And even with that, you still have to replace the parts. So let's just generally say cars are not assets. Assets appreciate in value, and they are able to be liquidated for a cash value. And depending on the kind of asset, it can create income for you. And that income itself can create interest, and that interest can create interest called compounded interest. So a car is not an asset. So this is an example of how we evaluate what does our situation really look like. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So what is the importance of these factors? The healthier your cash flow is, the more opportunity you have to make decisions about what types of assets you want to buy, right? The higher your net worth is, indicates the more ownership you have in your assets, right? The higher your net worth is says, I don't owe as much on what I own. What I own and what my name is on, I actually own that. Nobody can take that from me. I don't have a lot of debt on the stuff that I own. And again, the more your net worth increases, the greater the opportunity for you to, guess what? Make decisions about long-term investments, to systemically invest, to increase your investments. And what about debt to income? So debt to income is extremely important. Why is this important? Because if I have accumulated so much debt that it affects my cash flow, then I don't have the liquidity or the options to save money and prepare for emergencies. I don't have the ability to protect what I love and who I love. And I don't have really the wherewithal to potentially invest long term because my budget is challenged so much. So those are foundational things that we have to take a look at. And earlier on in the presentation, we looked at the wealth gap. And I just believe that it's a problem. I know 100% the wealth gap is probably 100% going to be there because we've had legalized slavery for over 400 years in our country. And yes, women build wealth, but we need to build it more. The wealth gap is growing wider. And these are financial principles, everyone, that, they seem textbook, they may seem a little boring, but I promise you, they are very real. I've worked in this space. I've watched people bring, $200, $300, $400, $5,000 in the bank to invest, rolling it over from a retirement account or bringing from another financial institution. And it is real. And I've seen accounts that have earned and accumulated appreciation in value because they've experienced, the concepts that we talked about today, growth and earnings and profit and capital in their investment accounts. So these principles really do work, but we have to get ourselves in position to experience them. I asked a question earlier. I said, can everybody achieve wealth? It's subjective. Today, I might not be able to because I have a few things I need to address in my budget, but come see me 6 months from now. So it's going to be subjective, and it starts with taking the time to evaluate where you are. So what is the order of things? And we've talked about that, but the first thing is, meet your foundational needs. Let's look at the foundation, and we're going to get in that. We're going to get into what is foundational and what is important. There are things that some people just do not like to talk about. They don't want to get into their budget. They don't want to get into what their income is. They don't want to get into conversations about why they haven't increased their income in 10 years. They don't want to get into the fact that, they haven't, acquired additional skills that would yield more income or yield, upward mobility in their career. We have to have these conversations because if we don't have these conversations, we're not going to get into the space of experiencing some of these qualities. So meet your foundational needs first. Accumulate assets systemically and over time. Now, individuals that are born into wealth or they inherit wealth, they can take $100,000 and buy, 30 shares of stock, of the highest, most expensive stock, which I actually don't recommend buying stock when it's, in a bull market at its highest price. You buy stock at a low price and you experience the growth in the value of that stock. But accumulate assets, investment stocks, whatever your plan is with your professional advisor, what have you. Manage your debt. And if you do accumulate debt, use it smartly. Good debt, purchasing real estate, right? If you need to go back and get an education because it's going to help prepare you for the career of your choice, of a passion that you have, generally student loans have very, very low interest rates. I would not consider that to be bad debt, although no debt is better than smart debt. So if you can acquire anything without debt, go for it. Now, there's another discussion that says, should I tie up all my liquid cash in buying assets versus getting a loan? Well, that's going to depend because when you look at investments, there's always a period where you make a decision to liquidate that investment, right? So if you are looking at purchasing investments to eventually liquidate within a certain period of time, you may not want to tie up your money. You may want to consider how you might leverage your ability to purchase assets by using bank loans. That's a whole nother conversation in class. You want to protect your credit. That's the next thing on the slide here. You want to protect your credit. You want to diversify your assets. So you don't want to put all of your eggs in one basket, right? So maybe you want to get comfortable with investing and maybe you start doing something called dollar cost averaging in a mutual fund. But maybe as your income earns or you begin to accumulate more, you may decide that you want to get into purchasing individual stocks after having, maybe done research and realizing that certain sectors or industries are of interest to you. You may then be interested in, getting into real estate. So you want to diversify, but understand there's a time to do it all. There's a way and there's a method and an approach to do it. Okay. Now let's take a look at this particular slide. Okay. At the very bottom, this slide says contingency planning, insurance planning, investment planning, retirement planning, and estate planning. In the contingency planning phase, which is what we've talked about a lot today, you want to be prepared for having a contingency or an alternative plan to your very first status quo, right? So if I have my 9-to-5 job and that doesn't work out, what is my contingency plan for making sure I don't get evicted or to make sure I don't lose my home? Okay, contingency plans. If something happens, make sure. Let's see what we got left. Okay, so if something happens and I lose a loved one, is there insurance to cover expenses for my home? Investment planning. How do I want to, move into the space of actually investing? What types of tools am I going to use to start that? I may want to start at my job, but in order for me to be balanced and to be diversified, I want to also do something outside of my work too. Same goes for insurance. Same thing with retirement planning. So you want to take care of those emergency contingencies first before you skip steps, so that you're making sure that you're covering all your bases. Again, you want to take a foundational approach. You want to manage your cash flow. You want to have a contingency emergency plan. You want to borrow money if you do at the lowest possible cost and pay your debts down. You want to make sure you have protections in place. So think about this. If you are the breadwinner and something happens to you and you have children, what kind of income will be lost with you not being there? How will that family suffer from the loss of your earned income? When you think about insurance, you have to think about it like that. You want to systemically invest for the long term. Diversify. You want to explore entrepreneurship as an added mix to your investment portfolio. Businesses are great investments. Okay. Now, in terms of accumulating assets, you can accumulate assets through inheritance, investing in the stock market, participating in company-sponsored retirement plans, acquiring or purchasing real estate, investing or purchasing a building, starting or building a scalable business. These are some of the ways that you can build assets. Do women build wealth? Yes, they do, but we need to build it more. We can learn from our pioneers. What did we learn from our pioneers? We learned that the importance of timing is important. These women knew how to seize opportunities.
I'm not sure what happened. I guess we'll wait just a few more seconds because we want to honor everyone's time. But have you ladies learned a lot today about what wealth really is and how much work it takes to really become stewards of your finances? Yes, I'm not sure what happened, but I will say that from the information that was shared even earlier today with Lisa Terry, and then today, this evening with Joyce Rice, there's a lot to take into account when you're wanting to build a legacy. That's why it's so important to instill young people with the foundations of what wealth really is, and not just spending money and wearing your money, but actually kind of having stocks and bonds and insurance and even knowing what those things are. So thank you all so much for joining us this evening.